Oil up your guns, put on your tank tops, and comb your damn mullets. We're going to get into the last buddy cop movie of the 80s. Let's do it. And the movie I'm reviewing today was the last buddy cop movie of the 80s. This film came out December 22nd of 1989. And that film is Tango and Cash. This movie had a $55 million budget, and upon release it made $63.4. But the budget was huge for 89, but they went $20 million over budget during production, and that was one of the many problems behind the scenes while they were trying to make this film. Now, to direct this film, they brought in a Russian director who I'm not familiar with, and he's done mostly only Russian films. And that gentleman is Andrei Konchalovsky. I think I said that right. And he only done one American film up to that point, and the rest were Russian films, but they tipped him to be the director for this film. And this film is mostly famous for having Sylvester Stallone and Kurt Russell. Sylvester Stallone as Ray Tango, and Kurt Russell as Gabriel Cash. But Kurt Russell was not the first actor they had envisioned for that role. They actually wanted to make this a Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger team up. Schwarzenegger didn't want to do it, so he bowed out. They brought in Patrick Swayze next to do the role, and Patrick Swayze was going to do it, but then he dropped out to go do a little film called Roadhouse, and then Kurt Russell came in, which was worked out because Kurt Russell and Stallone together are awesome in this film. We also have Terry Hatcher in this film as Ray Tango's sister. We also got Jack Palance as Perrette, the main bad guy and their main nemesis. We also got James Hong makes an appearance in this film as one of the bad guys. We got Clint Howard in this film. Byron James in this film, who's great in the film with the Cockney accent and the ponytail. He plays Rakeen, the main Perrette's right-hand man kind of deal. And we got the great Jeffrey Lewis and other character actors. This movie is loaded with great character actors from top to bottom. And basically, Stallone and Russell play two cops from two different departments in the city of Los Angeles. And Stallone's character is more of the buttoned-up, nice suit, slick hair, nicely groomed, stockbroker guy. He's very wealthy. He doesn't even need to be doing this shit, but he does it anyway. And Kurt Russell's more like the working man cop. He has the mullet. Kurt Russell's hair is on point in this film, definitely, from an 80s perspective. And he's a kind of a slob, and he isn't dressed the nicest, but he's a damn good cop. And they're the number one and number two cops in the city. They're always in the headlines, and are always foiling Perrette's stuff, seizing his drugs, getting his guns. And he's had enough of this. And he concocts a plan with James Hong and this other guy that are two other bad guys in the film, and to put them in prison and set them up. And they both get tips about this deal going down at this warehouse, and they both show up. And this is the first time they meet as characters face to face, and they have, they're kind of shooting off to each other and giving each other shit. And they discovered his dead body in this room, and this dead body's an FBI agent. And the cops come in and they arrest them because they think they're the ones that did it, and there's a recording. They're set up, and they end up going to jail. Now, the problem with them going to jail was they pleaded that they were going to take 18 months at a minimum security prison, and they end up going to maximum security prison. And most of those guys that are in there, they put away. And they find themselves in trouble. We have a scene in the washroom, or in the laundry room, right out of Lethal Weapon. They're hanging from chains, and they're lowered in the water, and they're getting electrocuted. And they've realized they got to break out of prison. And they break out, and Stallone's sister they put two and two together, how they've been set up. Perrette set them up. Stallone's sister gets kidnapped. They go to Perrette's compound, where it's like in the middle, this big building in the middle of this dirt field, and they got to get through these big trucks with machine guns and rocket launchers on them. A really absurd chase scene, but fun. And they end up killing the bad guy, saving his sister, and we have a happy ending. And that's pretty much Tango and Cash. I know I glossed over a lot of stuff, but if you're like me and you like these films, you've seen this movie before. It's a typical buddy cop movie, but in this movie, you got the great Sylvester Stallone and the great Kurt Russell. And they work really well together. I know I said it before, but they are fantastic. And the one-liners, most of them work, and they're hilarious. And, Jack Palance's bad guy is a little over the top. Some of it's just a little stupid. Like, why don't you just kill these guys? Instead of going through this whole rigmarole about putting them in prison and trying to set them up and all this shit. But whatever. If they didn't do that, we wouldn't have that much of a movie, I guess, considering the movie they wanted to make. Now, getting into some of the problems behind the scenes, the director wanted to make a more serious a cop action movie. But the producers wanted a more comedic movie. even going into parody at some point. So the director and the producers were butting heads constantly. Then you have Stallone in the middle of this, who was used to writing and directing his own films, a lot of them anyway, and even some of them he ghost directed. Like there's rumors that he ghost directed Rambo 2. There's actually a lot of people who say he directed Cobra for the most part, and even this film, some people say he ghost directed this film as well. Who knows if that's true? And then we come to the point where the movie was going $20 million over budget, and a couple weeks before they were done principal photography, they fired the director and brought another director in. And then they ended up re-editing the movie before it was released. As a matter of fact, they said before it was released on December 22nd, they just got done editing this film just a few weeks before that. They were still editing right up before release. That's how quick or how close they got to not having this film out by their release date. And there was a lot of other problems. You could look online. There's a lot of problems that happen behind the scenes. But the movie is still fun. Yes, there's some goofy shit. And some of the editing around the action scenes, they cut away from a lot of the violence, and there's a reason for that. After Cobra, Stallone made that movie with Warner Brothers as well, they had a lot of problems with the MPAA, and they had to cut the film down a lot for that film. They cut a lot of the violence out because the MPAA was busting them about it, and they tell them they have to cut it down and give them an X rating. So Warner Brothers, trying to preempt the MPAA, had a lot of the violence cut out ahead of time. So you'll notice during the action scenes, it jump cuts a lot away from something that was some violent act that was going to happen. That's why the film, some of the action scenes is cut a little strange because they cut around a lot of the violence, even though it's a rated R movie. But still, at the end of the day, and there's some other goofy things, I still enjoyed this film enough to give it an 8 out of 10. And the reason why I'd give it an 8 out of 10 is because Kurt Russell and Sylvester Stallone and the other character actors in this film, all the actors do good stuff. It's just the movie around them is not the greatest, but they elevate it to make it an 8 out of 10. Kurt Russell and Sylvester Stallone alone are good enough to sit down and watch this film. You can have a lot of fun with it. It's only an hour and 40 minutes long or 42 minutes long. See, yeah, if you've never seen Tango and Cash, I highly recommend it. It's a fun time. It's a product of its time, the late 80s. Have you ever seen this film? Let me know down below what your thoughts are on Tango and Cash. I give it an 8 out of 10. Where does this go for you in the rankings of Sylvester Stallone films? Do me another favor, hit the thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, all that good stuff, and take care of yourselves, and I will be back soon with another review. Thanks. Bye.